Hi, welcome back to CS170. We're here to finish up on Chapter 4. This will be for tables. Okay, so if we look on the HTML coverage, last week we did the basic. Now we're doing the more advanced HTML. Um, last lecture or last few lectures, we covered things including images, styles, CSS, um, modifying things either as a block or inline. Remember for CSS, or actually just in general, like the higher up you go, the more it kind of cascades down. If you do it inline, it's almost like an override at the beginning, not at the beginning, for that line. But if you're editing a whole bunch of web pages all looking with the same style, that doesn't really scale too well. So ideally, you want to define all of your styles up at the top with something like CSS files, and then that will kind of be used for all of the pages in one place, so you don't have to make all kinds of edits all over the place. We covered lists, and then for this lecture, we're going to cover tables. Okay, so I think a couple of things before I start. One thing is I mentioned in the last lecture for the extra credit. Again, as I've mentioned in the past, we're looking at these things as an opportunity for you to practice what we've done in class and look at things for studying for the exam. So doing all of these different things is going to be an exam, really. So you definitely know very basic things in terms of like the bold, the italics, setting the paragraphs. What does a singleton tag mean? There's a couple other formatting tags that we covered. The skeleton, which would be under the required tags. Headings, uh, this validation service, marking with the anchor tags. Remember path names. I was talking about that in the last lecture with the HTML file. You can reference on the absolute path or relative path, so you know that's going to be on there. You're definitely going to have images. You're going to have different styles and block edits, block styling, I should say. Lists, ordered, unordered, and then the tables. Okay, so all of these are going to be on the exam. So I think from my standpoint, good practice would be just to practice all of these. So last week you did pretty much most of the stuff here on the left-hand side. Um, I went and edited the HTML file, so you should be able to do the same. I think you've been doing that with the TA. So practice doing absolute path and relative path reference. Um, you can send me screenshots of that. So I'm not going to be able to see your local drive. So if you want to do some relative path names, I'm not going to be able to do much except see what you put out there on your HTML. But yeah, try go and do all of that. After we're done with today, you should be able to do tables also. Um, and yeah, do the ordered, unordered lists on there also. Okay. And then the other thing I want to say is I'd like to get feedback from all of you. So as you submit your extra credit, make sure you give me a line about like what you like about the class, what you think could be better, areas of confusion that I can help for the whole class really. So if there's things I could be documenting better or whatnot, feel free to drop me a line. We'd like to get this feedback sooner rather than later. And that goes for myself and for the TAs. Let us know. I know this is like a pretty challenging situation we're in right now, and we're all trying to work our way through this and improve. And we can only improve if you give us feedback on things that will help you to be successful with this class. Okay, so make sure you do send us some feedback along with the extra credit. All right, so again, extra credit. Just go ahead and exercise all of these different things. Try to do a HTML file. Show me what that looks like. Show me what the browser looks like after you put all that in there. Okay, so let's go ahead and step into tables. Okay, so right here at the bottom you can see what we mean by a table, right? You'll see something like at the top row here. In this case, they're talking about package name, description, nights, and a cost per person. And then you have each of the rows in here. Okay, so in some ways it's kind of similar to what you've been looking at with lists, but you just have to look at that structure, and then there'll be things you can play around with it, right? So one thing on the outside, you can see this table here, okay, and then you can see like there's a border here, right? And then within that, which are these rows, right? TR, table rows. You can do different things. So in this case, right here at the top, you'll have TH, right? So that's the header. That's this line right here, okay? So I kind of draw the analogy. It's sort of similar to when you say like H1, H2, H3. In this case, it's a little bit smaller, so I don't know, maybe H5 or something. So it's kind of similar to that. But you can do a little bit later, you'll be doing something like a column span. So you can do that, and that kind of makes it so that you can have almost sub columns. I'll show you what I mean in a second with that. But outside of stuff like that, you could just do the top row with just some bolding in it or headers in it, and you'll get the same effect, right? Like I said, the only difference really is with the TH, you get to do the column span, column span, which I'll show you in a second here. And then everything down from that, it would be basically TD, right? And that's basically each of these elements right here. Okay, so you can see weekend escape, the description, the nights, and the cost. Right, so you would just put a TD for each of these in here. I'm going to show you an example in a second, so don't worry too much about this. Okay, so that's the general idea. So in some ways, it's kind of similar to what you've been doing with the lists and the rows. Right, so you just have to know how to define it. Before you're defining a list, now you're defining a table. And then what do you do for each row? Okay, so we didn't have like this this header row like in the list or the unordered list, ordered or unordered list, but here we do. Okay, so we're here. So there's a couple other things you can add. This is the caption here. Okay, and again, we're just mentioning the header tags here. And as it says here, this is what I was meaning by call span, column span, right? Call span equals to 2, right? And this is what it ends up looking like, right? So here's the caption up here, bilingual countries, and then you have languages, then you have Dutch and French, okay, as an example for Belgium, okay? And you look up here, again, you have the table, see the table up here, and then you see these TRs, that's for each row on here, okay? And like I said, the notable thing here is this call span equals to 2. Okay, if you didn't really have that, then it doesn't really matter. You can just do TD, and then you can do like whatever, H3, H4, make it bold and whatnot. And I'll show you in my example what I mean by playing around with these things, just like any other HTML. Okay, so that's a quick thing. Let me step into a real example here. Yeah, I left this page up, I guess. So this, again, you probably see this. This is week 4, the usual stuff here. Okay, let me go to my HTML. Oh, before I do that, prior lecture I mentored this, right? You don't have to memorize all this, right? There's all kinds of references that show you this. So all these different colors, you can refer to it by the color name, or you can refer to by the hex reference, right? And there's also the RGB reference, but I doubt you're going to do that, right? But let me go to here. So these are like the broad namings here, right? But now if I go here, and this was in the w3schools.com color names, All right, and I think I've mentioned this in prior lectures also. Here, so I can select on different portions here. Okay, and you see what's happening here. There's like a little slider thing here too. I can do this. Okay, and there's a whole bunch of different colors really. Okay, and so again, you're talking about the different hex that you can get, right? And then here's the RGB over here. All right, so there's another way for you to kind of get all kinds of different colors and pick exactly the color you want for your for your background, for your text color, whatever. Okay, so this is like htmlcolorcodes.com and color picker. So something else you might want to play around if you really want to get fancy. Again, for the purpose of this class, doesn't really matter. Just know that you can specify colors by name, by hex, or by RGB. Okay. Let me close this guys up. This was my last lecture. All right, here. And some of you probably already noticed that when you play around with this, you don't have the HTML skeleton, right? It keeps on flipping back to the most basic thing, because the reason for this is just all it's trying to do is be able to show you the HTML in question and then what it translates to over here on your browser very quickly into one place, right? Like I said, if you really want to get the practice, if you were doing it on your own, just create your own HTML file, right? So I create this index HTML, and then you can see my skeleton here, right? So you've seen this from prior classes, okay? Let's come back to here. Now let's see what we did here. I did a couple of different things. So number one, I set up the caption. Okay, so that's fine. But within the caption, I played around with a couple of different things. And with HTML, there's a couple of ways to do certain things. I just chose to do it this way. Right, so I set up a H1 here, and you guys remember this. A lot of you submitted extra credit with this, so this is fine. And then within this, I thought I would play around by doing a span. Okay, so I did the span, and what the span allows me to do is, in this particular case, I'm setting a color. Okay, so I want to set the color to be blue. Okay, so that's what I did. So I did the span, and then I did a style and set the color to be blue. So you can see right away on the right hand side you got blue. Okay, so this is no different than if you want to do similar things with the list, right? Ordered, unordered list, whatever, doesn't matter. So you want the color of the text, let's say, to be blue. You would do something like this, right? So within each row, which I'm going to come to in a second down here, you would do something like that. Okay, or if you want to do like the whole table, whatever, you would set a style up in the header section. Okay, so if I'm down here, notice I set up this FX to be a call span of 2, right? And you see what happens here, right? So here I'm setting the currency, Canadian dollar, Singapore dollars, right, and a number, right? So the column header is 1, right? But I span 2. I'll call them sub-columns, right? So there's column span of 2. If I did 3, then I have to make sure I create another TD in here so I can create 3. But here's 2. You get the idea. For your extra credit, if you want to, you can do 3. And then just make sure you add another sub-column down here for each of your data rows or data elements. So here, here's TR. Right, and then within the TR is each of the data, I'll call them data elements, right? So TD, okay? So January, $100, and then you see here, within this TD, I set up an H5, right? Oh, and I could have done anything, right? But it's just a little bit bold here, you can see that. I just did this just so you can see that I can play around with different things in here, okay? If I want to do like a color, I can certainly do that, right? Maybe I'll do like, a span color blue, right? Maybe for the heck of it, I'll do that right now. Let me see. So I'll do that. Where's that? Here. Under Canadian dollar. And then I'll make that blue. And it's blue. All right. So very simple. Not much to it, right? So all I'm showing you here is that you have the general table structure, right? So you have table, you have each of the rows, also the caption. So I put a caption. This is the caption up here. We have the special row at the top, which we're populating with TH instead of TD. And all that does is make it this bold type of thing. And then within each TR, right, you have these TDs, data elements. And then within that, if you want to play around with different things, right? So this is just your regular default here, but you can see over here with the Canadian dollar, I did it H5, right? And I also did it with this style, making it blue. And I only applied to this, that's why you only see the Canadian dollar to be blue. The Singapore dollar is still black, right? Because down here, I just did the H5. That's it. Okay. But I can make it a different color. You can go crazy with this, right? So you can do all kinds of stuff in here. So from my perspective, what you need to understand for the exam is just understand this overall structure, how to do the caption, how to do this header row here, and then how to populate each of these guys in here. Make sure for this, you understand how to do this column span. And then really, probably it would be a good idea for you to understand how to quote unquote inject these different formatting in here, right? So in this case, like I said, I did the span and I just quote unquote injected and made it blue, okay? If you understand how to do that, you're sitting pretty good, right? You understand other stuff, right? Doing bold, doing italics, whatever, play around with it, okay? So this is something you can play around with for as part of your extra credit. Submit it to me. I think it's good practice for you, okay? Let me see if there's anything else. Nope, that's it. So for tables, that's pretty much what you should try and be able to do for the exam. Okay, so thank you for your time today, and we'll finish up this week's lectures with my next lecture. Thank you.